Kakadosh, Erev Tov, Siman Tzadik Gimel. We are on Smichat Chaver. This is, according to them, it's Shiur 12. We have to finish the entire Siman Tzadik Gimel today. Okay, so let's start. Beliot and Noten Tam Livgam. Everybody with me? Beliot and Noten Tam Livgam. In this Siman, we're going to learn about the halachic ramifications of absorbed flavor in pots and pans. So, everybody, I'm sure, has heard of Noten Tam Livgam. Rabbi, I cooked in a pot. And right now, the rabbi is going to ask you first question. When was the last time you cooked in this pot? Was it within 24 hours or after 24 hours? Why? Because there's something which is called noten tam livgam, that it's giving a bad taste, okay? Which is called bliot, things which are absorbed, okay? Gemara and Chulin. Which one? Bliot? Livgam. Bgam is a defect, something bad. Noten tam, it's giving a taste which is defective. It's a bad taste. Beliot. Look in page 37. Tront set. Right? In the Siman Tzadik Gimel, it has over there. Well, one minute. It says here. Siman Tzadik Gimel, Gemara and Chulin. Right? Kedera shebishel ba basal v'bishel ba chalav im bishel benoten tam. If you have a kedera, a pot that you cooked meat in it, don't cook milk in it. But if you did, it's going to depend upon noten tam. Says the Gemara. Right? Then avodah zarah, right? Vekulan sheishtamesh bahen ad shelo yatvid v'shelo yagiv v'shelo yibenu. Right? Tani chad asur tani nich mutar la kashia. Ha keman namar noten tam livgam usur. Ha keman namar noten tam livgam mutar. It all depends whether it's going to be noten tam livgam is mutar or asur. Okay? According to the mandama that says noten tam mutar. What about giulei avdei chovim yisrachmana? Why? He says Torah lekedera bat yoma. It's only going to be that the Torah prohibited a kedera the same day, but it's not noten tam livgam. But afterwards, it was going to be Kedera Sherabat Yuma, Mishu Kedera Bat Yuma. Which means like this. Everyone look in the English. We're going to read again. Gemara and Chulin teaches, right, in the English here. Gemara teaches that a pot, page 1. Okay, page 1 in the English. A pot used to cook meat should not be used to cook milk. If it was used to cook milk, the milk may only be consumed if there's no meat flavor in the milk. The Gemara and Avodah Zarah quotes... The Gemara in Avodah Zarah quotes a dispute whether milk cooked. Which one? Yes, meaning you right now had a pot used to cook meat. Now you cooked milk in the same pot of the meaty pot, but there's no meat, just in the pot. So he says you're not allowed to because if it gives flavor, says the Gemara, right? There's going to be a machloka whether the milk cooked in a meaty pot is forbidden if the pot was not used for the last 24 hours. The opinion that allows the milk holds on 10,000 is mutar. When a pot has not been used for 24 hours, the absorbed flavor becomes pagum. Here it translated as impaired or defective. Ken? Did they say the same thing in French? Or defective. Just say defective. Right? Fine. So you have defective. Okay, the next. And can no longer be forbid the food from being cooked. The opinion which forbids the milk, holds on tentam livkam, is going to be asur. So even if the forbidden flavor is pagum, it's still going to be discernible and forbidden in the milk. So again, one more time, you have a machloket in the Gemara, right? We're on the bottom of the top of page 1. Is it going to be Siman Tzadik Gimel 93? Is it going to be noten tam livgam mutar or asur? It's a machloket in the Gemara. The Gemara questions about the opinion that says noten tam livgam mutar. Why is there a need to kosher kelim at all? Wait 24 hours and then that's it. Imagine something becomes not kosher. Just always wait 24 hours. Says no. It's still asur. Why? Because maybe you're going to use within the 24 hours, and then it's going to be a problem. Meaning, how are you going to remember the guy just ate meat? He's going to start saying, no, I ate meat 3 hours later or 3 hours earlier in order that I could have the cheese, the pizza here. How much cheese is there? Not cheese. It is a person, he doesn't remember. So what happens? What happens all of a sudden is that he's going to come and he's going to use the pot. And he thought ki'ilu there was 24 hours, and it wasn't 24 hours, it was 23 hours, and I just made it averah. So because of that, it's going to be a problem. Shulchan Aruch and Sif Aleph Paskins, he discusses a case of accidentally using a ben yomo or eno ben yomo pot for the opposite food. So now we're going to go into it, okay? Remember, we're learning halakha now, right? Smichat Chaver is a shiur of halakha. So just that way everyone gets very, very clear. So that way, I know they're very busy on the phones, but at least they get clear what they're supposed to be doing now. Number 1, accidentally. Using a ben yomo pot for the opposite food. So what happens if a person right now made a mistake? They used the pot that was the same day For the opposite, obviously, because if you're using a milky for milky, there's no question, or meaty, there's no question. So you, again, same day, right, and use the opposite pot. Obviously, it was accidentally, right? Beshogeg says, Shulchan Aruch paskins, that a pot used to cook meat should not be used to cook dairy. And if it was used for milk within 24 hours, the milk may be permitted depending on whether the taste of the meat is discernible in the milk. Meaning, check the taste.
Meaning,
Yeah.
in other words, if it's all of a sudden too good, maybe.
No, you check the taste. So, for example, right now, we need to taste, does it have a taste of meat or not? Right? So he comes and he says, check, the Ramah paskins, that to permit the milk, shishim is required against the volume of the pot's walls. Okay? Remember, according to the Ramah, you never depend on taste. You remember we learned this already. According to Shulchan Aruch, you check the taste. According to the Ramah, right? We never hold on taste. You always need 60. Yeah.
You check the taste even if it's not kosher?
No. So not you. You would get a goy. Right? Remember, whenever it's going to be a taste. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. 100%. You could do that. Yeah. The Badei Shulchan explains that since we do not know exactly how much meat was absorbed in the pot, we should be machmir and assume that all the walls also absorb the meat. Meaning we don't know how much are in. So what are we going to say? I've got a meaty pot. So what am I going to say? The entire walls of the pot are absorbed of meat. Because I don't know how much meat actually are in the walls. So therefore, the Shach now writes that this disputes between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah parallels one that we already learned at the beginning of Tzadik Bet, whether a non-Jew is trusted to taste the food. Shulchan Aruch says yes, the Ramah says no. So we already learned this. Right? Deja vu again. One more time. You have a doubt. Let's just check the taste. If you cannot taste it, because maybe it's going to have a problem with meat and milk, so obviously you're going to get a goy. Right? So the goy will taste it. And then he's going to tell us, does it have, right? Does he have the taste or not? According to the Ramah, you never rely upon the goy, and we don't care about the taste. So what do? You always do shishim. You do 60. So now the 60 you're going to need opposite the entire walls of the Keli. So let's see like this. The Shach further clarifies two details in the opinion of the Ramah that he says you need shishim. It is almost impossible for the food in a pot to contain shishim against the volume of the pot's walls unless the pot is very thin and wide. Meaning, if you have a very long pot, but the walls are very, very thin, and you could put a lot of food inside of the pot, so then what happens is you could probably have shishim 60 times in the volume, meaning in the food. Yeah, something similar to a frying pan, right? But even if it's almost like a frying pan, meaning that it's got a little bit higher up, but let's even pretend a frying pan, so you understand. Meaning it's very long, very thin, right? But you're able to put a lot of things on top. So then you could have shishim, you could have 60 times in the food connected the walls of the pot. Because I'm going to check how much do I have of the walls of the pot. And I do 60 times that.
How do you measure?
You would have to measure the, how do you call it? Whenever you're doing volume. Yeah, you would probably just take and check.
You're talking about that the food.
Ki'ilu, you're going to check in volume. Volume.
Walls of
volume.
1 to 6.
So what are you going to do?
Liquid that you're pouring in there.
You're right. So it's not in volume in that volume. But what you're doing is, for example, let me see how long it is. Right? Let me see. Okay, fine. It's going to be, let's just pretend. It's going to be 9-inch pan. So it's 9 inches. So how much of food volume do you have? Do you have 60 times the 9 inches? Okay. Now remember, we're talking about the food is like this. Because if it's a thick wall, so then for sure you won't have 60 connected. You won't have 60. But die, because it's volume. It's volume. Right? No, just the volume. But again, that's what we say. It all depends whether it's going to be a thick walls or thin walls. If it's thin walls, you might have a chance. If it's thick walls, there's nothing what to talk about. Okay? One second. Which one? Yeah. We're going to see little by little. 1 second. So now he says like this. Number 2.
outside.
Shishim is required against the volume of the pot only when you don't know how much meat was cooked in the pot in the last 24 hours. But if you know how much meat was cooked in the pot, right, the last time, so therefore you only need shishim against that meat. Because all the meat cooked in the prior before the 24 hours, so if there's shishim what was cooked in the past 24 hours, the food is kosher, but the pan must be koshered since it was used for the opposite food. So now like this, one more time. let's say I just cooked a steak in this frying pan, 1 pound. So what happens? So therefore, I cannot say, I don't care how thick the walls are or how big the pot is. I only cooked one steak. And if that steak is 1 pound, right, or it was multiple, it was basically, forget what you're cooking, but basically I got 1 pound. So you only need 60 times that steak. I'm not going to say, right? I'm not. Yes. No, because whatever was already in the walls after was already in the 10 gam. I'm cooking a steak right now. When was the last time you used this pot? 24 hours. But right now, today, within the 24 hours, what did I cook? A steak. How much is a steak? 1 pound. So therefore, I'm going to come and I'm going to need only 60 times the 1 pound. The walls cannot absorb more than what the steak is. Even absorbing this entire steak, it doesn't make sense. The steak is right here. You understand? So therefore, the maximum that you need is 60 times that 1 pound because you know, right? You know how much that there is. Okay? Fine. That's going to be the first halakha. Okay? By the way, you have the example on the bottom. Yes, so you need 60 pounds. In that case that I gave you, you would need 60 pounds. Now, 60 pounds, you have a, but, right? Fine.
Even if you cannot finish it.
Yeah. So he says like this. He says, yeah. אתה צריך להגיד לא תיקום ולא תיטור. לא תיקום ולא תיטור. Yeah.
התעוררת.
Yeah. לא תיקום ולא תיטור. Yeah. For example. Yeah. He comes and he says, הוא רק מחזיר. אתה שמעת את זה? הוא רק מחזיר. לא תוקם, רק מחזיר. Fine. He comes and he says like this. For example. Are you guys listening? Shh. Listen. Yeah. He says, for example, look at the footnote. The example. You made a meat soup with only 1 kazait of meat, and 2 hours later, after it was cleaned, right, you use the same pot to cook milk. You would need shishim against the kazait. Although the kazait was not fully absorbed in the pot, Chazal needed a quantifiable measurement that assumed that a kazait of flavor enters the pot. So imagine right now, you have a big soup, and you put, whether it's going to be chicken, or you put meat, but how much meat do you? Oh, no, put a kazait. The kazait, 28 grams. Zeklum, it's nothing. Right, sometimes they put chicken bones, right, or the chicken neck, like things like that, like in a soup. So therefore, what you're doing is you only need 60 times that meat. You don't need 60 times keneged the entire soup. So therefore, when you're going to come and you're going to use the 60, it's very easy to get 60 times shishim. You understand? 60 times. It's very easy to get. Okay? No, here it's accidentally. Okay? Fine. Next case. Okay?
It was an accident.
Accident. Only accident. We're only talking about accidents.
Then you can do it.
Yes, not that you could do it, then you're allowed to eat it. You still have to go to the pot, though. Okay, 1 minute. Next, what happens if you use an eno ben yomo pot? Meaning it was not used for 24 hours. Eno ben yomo means it's not ben yomo, ben, the son of yomo. So you come and he says this. Shulchan Aruch adds that if you use an eno ben yomo pot, meaty pot, to cook dairy, so the dairy food is permitted, but the pot itself may not be used to cook neither meat or milk. Yes, because one more time, the food, right, we would already pass 24 hours, but the pot now has inside of it meat and it also has milk. So how do you do it?
We didn't do it by accident. We did it like on purpose.
No. Here's accidentally. We're always an accident. Again, we're not talking about, I'm going to tell you a secret. If somebody on purpose comes and he's cooking meat in a milky pot, I don't know if he's going to call you and say, Rabbi, by the way, I just cooked purposely think, am I allowed to eat the food? Usually not. Usually. Again, there's always Yotzei Min HaKlal, right? There's always that, I always find those, right? You could always find them, right? But usually they won't have it. So here we're talking about accidentally. Okay? Fine. So accidentally. One more time. One second. No. Nothing to do with those. No. Shulchan Aruch adds, right? We're not talking about now kashering. I just told you what it needs to do. I'm not talking about kashering. Hilchot kashering is another siman. That's already kuf kaf aleph. It's not here, right? Hagalat kelim. Shulchan Aruch adds that if you use an eno ben yomo pot to cook the dairy food is permitted because it's after the 24 hours, but the pot itself has to be kosher. The Rama adds that it may be used to cook parve foods, such as fish or vegetables. The Shach explains that you may not use it for the meat, since you just cook dairy. So using it for the meat is forbidden even after the 24 hours, just like a dairy pot. Similarly, you're not allowed to cook dairy because of the essence that it remains a meaty pot. However, when you cook parve, it's allowed. Pasta, parve, anything parve.
The use of the pasta after.
One second. Why? It's parve. Since no prohibited flavor enters the food, there's no problem of cooking in the opposite pot. The Shach concludes that although the cooking, the parve is allowed, the Ramah brings down that the custom is that you're never allowed to do such a thing, right? And he says, right, as that's what he says over here in our Siman, he records only that the strict halakha and not accept the custom. What does that mean? Obviously, it's going to be very difficult to keep a pot in your house that you cannot use not for meat and not for milk. What is the only thing you could use it for? Pasta. It's very, very difficult. So therefore, right, what? Yeah, the same thing. Pasta, vegetable, anything part of it. Now, why? It's very difficult because many times you can make a mistake. All you need is to put the vegetables and you're going to add a piece of chicken inside or a little tiny piece of meat or chicken lo mein or whatever you want. And all of a sudden you get into balagan. So therefore, the accepted custom is that even if you would have said that it's permitted, it's still going to be a sur. That's not the minhag. Okay, it's not the minhag. Now, it makes sense, right? This entire halakha, why would it be parve? Because at the end of the day, it's always going to be an obin yomo. Meaning, if you're never allowed to cook any more meat or milk, so if it's always going to be an obin yomo, the food is always kosher, meaning the food is always going to be okay. And you're never actually getting the real taste of the meat or the real taste of the cheese. So therefore, because of that, it's parve kilu. So it makes sense. The Kaf Chaim writes that according to Shulchan Aruch, one is allowed to use the pot for parve food, and this is a Sfaradi custom. Meaning, you're allowed to make a certain sign on the pot, and it's now a parve pot, and then you're allowed to always use it. However, he only permits using the pot if on an infrequent basis. But using it on a permanent basis is forbidden because you might end up using it for the meat of the milk. He writes that although this is logic of the Ramah, who forbids it even using it for parve, so that is the which one?
No sense. So I'm gonna designate it parv, and then okay, fine. So once a month I'm allowed to use it. What's considered
Okay, you're right. You're just asking now in a
what is the practical
right?
use?
What is it? He wants to say that for sure as kviyut, right? Which means kavua, for sure it's going to be prohibited because you're going to make a mistake. He wants to say if it's going to be infrequent. Now you're right. What does infrequent mean? Does that mean once a month? Once in a blue moon?
Just throw it out, or I leave it in my kitchen in the drawer. Right?
Exactly, and then
So put it in the special drawer.
And you don't know how many people they still will come and make the mistakes because my son, my daughter, my cleaning lady, my dad, they didn't realize they put it in the same drawer. They didn't realize I took it out. I use it. You're right, 100%. That's why the easiest is going to be is very, very difficult.
Also,
yes.
can you leave and then it was mixed now?
That's what he's just talking about.
Can you leave it even functioning?
That's what we just talked about. That's
Can you
exactly
do
what we're talking about.
for parv.
That's what we just talked about.
It become
Okay.
balagan.
But that's what we just talked about.
It's
better.
Often. I understand why often. I don't care about how often. How can you leave it pot in a status like that?
Again, that's what we're talking about. It's no problem. It should be noted that according to the Gemara and Shulchan Aruch, we're in the middle of page 2. Okay? It should be noted that according to the Gemara and Shulchan Aruch in Siman Tzadik Daled, Siv Zayin, there's a general rule that Stam Kelim Enam Minyuman. We assume that utensils not be used for 24 hours unless we know otherwise. Meaning, there's a general concept. The general concept is that Stam Kli is Eno Ben Yumo. Meaning, I'm not going to suspect that it's already been used within the 24 hours. So therefore, right, that's what we're going to take into consideration. Okay? Now we're going to speak about the following. Practical applications.
Does it make a difference if I do meat to milk or milk to meat?
No, it's all the same.
It's the same
The
thing.
exact same. Okay? The exact same. It's the same as Yisur.
Well,
Doesn't matter.
well, for Sfaradim, it makes sense because it's all about tam anyway.
Yeah, but even for Ashkenazim, everything's shishim. But it was
everything's
also tam.
shishim.
Just you can't be somech on the kfeila, so you do shishim. But it's the same thing.
With the pan after the meal, what we do with the pan
What do you mean? What do you do with them?
after we put meat dairy? How we can make it kosher because
Okay, that's another question. That's another halacha. How do you make it kosher? 1 minute. Later on. No. We have to speak about it. Lina, we'll try to speak about it probably. Okay, fine.
But there is
Treif-
something.
The what?
Excuse me, Rabbi. I just.
Treifed up utensils. Yeah, he comes and he says like this.
My
Page
favorite
2.
is waiting for him for dinner.
Yeah. Often, a fork or spoon is set aside to be koshered, and after was already accidentally used, right, for the opposite food. So again, this is a question that they asked, and I told you it's Siman Kuf Kaf, so we're going to learn it. So therefore, again, we always just siag la chochma shetika. We just listen, and then when we're listening, we're not going to ask. So then the brain comes and it absorbs, and all of a sudden we're going to be able to come, right? And he's going to understand what he's saying. Yeah? Fine. Often, yeah, a fork or spoon is set aside to be koshered. It was accidentally used for the opposite food. What is the halacha if you have guests and are short of a fork? Can you use the treif one? Or if a fleshik fork was ben yomo, and within 24 hours it was used again for dairy, the fork itself becomes treif. I mean, not be used for any food. If, however, now the fork, right, was eno ben yomo, right, and is now used for dairy, it does not become treif because there's no fusion of strong meat to milk flavor. Nevertheless, it may not be used for meat because it was just used for dairy. So it's essentially a meaty fork. According to Sfaradim, since you wish to use it as a one-time basis rather than permanently, it may be used for part of a food, such as fish. Again, that was the couple that we just brought down. According to Sfaradim, if it's a one-off, now I just realized here it's beforehand it sounded like on an infrequent basis.
Right.
Here he's saying it's a one-off, like straight out, a one-off, a one-time. So therefore, he comes and he says it may be used for part of a food. However, the custom of the Ramah
he's saying
is to forbid it.
Is
one time. No, but you're also only going to use it once. That's all.
No, it's not saying.
No, he said it.
According to Faradim, since you wish to use it on a
one-time basis.
You wish to
you're using it as a one-time basis. No. Well, yes, but at the end of the day, right? It already became taref. It was never there. It's a one-time. So he's saying it may be used for part of the food, such as fish.
It on purpose.
No, yes, but this is after it already became taref. That's why there's treifed up utensils. So this treifed up utensils, yeah, but but it was treifed up. That's what he said. One more time, a fork or spoon is set aside to be koshered after it was accidentally used for the opposite food. So what is halacha if you have guests and you're short a fork? So again, it became treif, it became taref, but now I've got guests. I need one extra fork. I'm looking around. I'm not going to give the guy a fork. What am I going to give him? Plastic. So now, are you allowed to or not? So as a one-time off, can I give it to him for? Yes. Yeah. Okay, that's a completely different halacha. We're going to learn that in Siman Kuf Bet. 1 minute. For fish.
For parve.
Parve. That's what we're talking about. Yes, doctor. Okay. No, we're going to speak about it. Some shitot want to say batel berov, but other shitot want to say what? It's not batel. Why? Davar sheish lo matirim. What is davar sheish lo matirim? You could do agala to all of them, and if you could do agala to all of them, so then you can't come and start relying that batel berov on davar sheish lo matirim. So you would have to do agala to all of them.
To all of it.
Yeah, you understand? Fine. What about? Yeah, Ataiti Mordechai. Yeah, okay.
Agala.
Yeah, Hagalat all of them. Realizing in the middle of cooking, what happens right now? What should you do if in the middle? What should you do if in the middle of preparing eggs with cheese, you realize you're using a meaty eno benumo pot? So imagine you thought you were just doing eggs, and all of a sudden now you add a cheese. Now in the middle you're saying, 1 second, I'm using a meaty pot. Are you allowed to finish cooking it, right, or not? Yeah. So Darkei Teshuvah paskins that you must stop immediately because the moment you realize and continue cooking, you're violating the Gezerah of Chazal, which forbids using it. So rather, you have to immediately remove the eggs and cheese and transfer them, right, to a dairy pan. Okay.
But now, it's in meat.
What's meat?
But it's in the meat.
Why would you have to throw it away?
Because it's in the meat pot.
But it's eno ben yomo.
אתה לא שומע. הוא אמר את זה.
B. Do modern day pots absorb? So basically, if you want, we could try to even erase everything that we just learned and say, Rabbi, 1 second. Today, since when does a pot absorb anything? Maybe it doesn't absorb. And if it doesn't absorb, erase everything that we just learned. Right? Let's see. So let's see. Let's see. One of the most glaring questions to answer for anyone learning these halachot is whether our kelim actually absorb flavor. Perhaps in the time of Chazal, the kelim were not manufactured to perfection and were therefore able to absorb the food they cooked. But today, do our stainless steel pots absorb flavor at all? The question is critically important. He says because if our pots do not absorb any flavor, so it's suffice to buy one set of pots and ensure that they're not used for meat and milk at the same time, but then you could switch off. Imagine if I'm going to say that there's no taste in the pots, what can you do? I could have the same pots for meat and for milk. Just don't use them at the same time. Right? What's the example?
Try to, and once a day cook with one of them, then you're automatically 48
Okay, fine. You're the 48 hours.
Glass.
Glass. The doctor said it. Glass. When I have a Pyrex, today I could make my pastel in a Pyrex. Pastel is the shepherd's pie in the Pyrex. So you've got the potato and the meat in the potato. I'm going to come after Shabbat, right? Let's pretend that I even heated up on Motzei Shabbat and I had it for Motzei Shabbat, right? And then I come, rinse it out. The other people that they didn't, that they just finished the pastel, they wanted to eat, but they wanted to eat milky. So I rinse it out, clean it, make sure there's nothing. And what do? I make my lasagna and I put it in the oven.
You can.
Of course, it's glass. What's the problem?
10 minutes after.
10 minutes afterwards, wash it.
Pyrex.
Yeah, it's Pyrex, doesn't absorb. So he comes, he says the same thing with a pot. If you're going to tell me that a pot does not absorb anything, so then I only need one set of pots. I'm going to, even within the 24 hours, just don't use them together at the same time, obviously. But right after I finish my meat, rinse it out, use it for milk. After I finish the milk, rinse it out, use it for meat. And that's it.
When did cooking with glass become a thing?
Exactly.
I'm
So he
saying
says,
that didn't exist. They didn't cook with glass.
no, glass was a new invention, right, later on. But they,
Strong glass.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, they always had glass.
Stein.
Glass was already in the Gemara. The Gemara brings down about glass. Usfunet minu chol, zevulun, glass, zechuchit. Sorry, right? But the glass that we have, like that you're able to cook in, that was very difficult. That you didn't have. So he says like this. It's clear from the psak of the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah in the previous section that during their times, kelim absorbed the flavor of the cooked foods cooked in them. And if the opposite food was subsequently cooked in the pot, it absorbed and forbid the food. Additionally, we find that absorbed flavor can sometimes be used as a leniency. Because the Shulchan Aruch Siman Tzadik Tetziv Dalet paskins that if you cook non-kosher meat with kosher food in a kosher pot, right? One more time. You're cooking non-kosher meat with kosher food. So you've got non-kosher and kosher in the kosher pot, right? Basically, you put a piece of cow, the non-kosher cow, inside of the pot. The absorbed flavor in the pot may be added, right, to the calculation of the shishim with the other kosher ingredients, right? Which means, right, for example, if you cook meat soup in a meaty pot, and then you discover that the meat was not kosher, so the shishim against the non-kosher meat may be calculated by combining all the food in the pot together with the previously absorbed flavor in the walls of the pot. So our kelim today made differently, such as they no longer absorb. So the question was like this, one more time. Remember that it's still considered min b'mino, the same species. So as long as it's going to be cow's meat, and not obviously horse or donkey or pig or something like that, it's min b'mino, same species. The only thing is just one is Publix non-kosher, and one is kosher meat. Fine. You're having a soup, and in the soup, you put the meat. All of a sudden, somebody comes in. He says, where did you buy the meat from? Costco. But what's the problem? Did you check? He says, what are you talking about? It's OU, right? Okay, fine. Whatever. That's the example we gave. He comes and checks. He got the non-kosher meat. So he just put it in. So now there's a leniency that since it's min b'mino, he could use not only the soup that was in the pot against that piece of meat, he could use even the walls, which was basically the previous
is better.
Right? Here, obviously, thicker is better, right? That he's going to use that against also the shishim. So here you're using it as a leniency, right? That which is absorbed in the walls to everybody, right? The Shulchan Aruch. Why? It's min b'mino. I don't understand you, doctor. It's min b'mino. No, chas v'shalom. I don't understand. If you have 3 pieces of meat, what is the case of the Gemara? Shalosh chatichot basar. One of them is not kosher, 2 of them are kosher. What is that? That's it. Rov, batel berov. I don't say it's not kosher because one is not kosher. It doesn't make it a different species. It's the same taste. Yeah. So the question now that we say is, are kelim nowadays different? Okay, are you with me? Are kelim nowadays different? Are pots nowadays different or not? So it is scientifically established that metal expands when heated. Okay, metal expands, which explains why the potential to absorb flavor exists specifically when the metal is hot. The question is, however, is whether it expands enough to absorb flavor, and if so, how much does it actually absorb? Okay, until here we're clear. So the Mayan, right? This is this is like a sefer right? They say it is related that a scientific test was conducted to determine whether different metals absorb flavor. Sheets of various metals, including metal and copper, were submerged in boiling oil and other fats for 2 hours. Afterwards, the sheet were washed with cold tap water and subjected to radioactive tests to determine whether any oil had been absorbed in the metal. The test had concluded that most materials did absorb oil, but only in very small quantities. The Sefer Emunati Techa writes the pots absorb at a ratio of 1 in 175,000, an amount that clearly would not reflect the flavor of food subsequently cooked in that pot. By the way, you should know, do you know why this halakha is so important? This halakha is so important because do you know that when you want to kosher pots, right? Let's say right now, right? Somebody actually just asked me today. They moved into a new apartment and they have a grill. Now the grill is basically where they put, well, it's on the stovetop. They have gas. And they have got the grill right in between the four things. They've got like a grill. So she asked me, can I come and can I use it? So I went and I said, you've got a problem. What's the problem? The problem is that how's it used? With liquid or without liquid? Without liquid. It's a grill. So therefore, how do you kosher it? You have to do libun chamur with a torch. Libun chamur, the way that it's brought down in halakha is you have to burn it so much until nitzotzot nitozin mimenu, until sparks come and start flying right from it. So he comes and he says, since you need sparks flying out of it, it has to become so red hot, right, that sparks come out. Nowadays, you could come, right, and you could do that. It will not become red, and you're not going to have sparks coming out from it. So there's a famous Rav Foifer and Rav Moshe Feinstein. There's a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch from Rav Foifer. Doesn't let me. Doesn't stop. Yeah. You have a zrika? You have a...
No, it's a very
זה
good
רב עיראקי אחד.
Yeah. Right? Rav Foifer comes and he says, and he brings down the tshuva Rav Moshe Feinstein. He's got a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch on Basar v'Chalav. And as he Kitzur Shulchan Aruch on Basar v'Chalav, he comes and he says that really be'emet, nowadays, since the metals are made so condensed, you will not see the food coming out. The sparks that were coming out, those chispas, those things, you know what that was? Food. That was the food. Nowadays, since it's so condensed the metal, it will not absorb the food in the same way. You will not see that. So what do you need? You need an amount to make it that it would have become red hot. So how much is that? 375 or 400 degrees Celsius. Celsius, right? Now, usually not, right? Now, why? Because what you need to do, so I'm going to tell you what I did. I remember that in Spain, we were koshering hotels. The way that we had to do it is that there, everything was in Celsius. It's not like here that everything's Fahrenheit. Here you're cooking in your oven. How much are you cooking? 250, 375 Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit is nothing. So it's Celsius. So there, it was 375 Celsius, but I needed to bring it up to 400. What we did was we left it on for hours and hours. And after it was on for hours and hours, we came with a blowtorch and then we used it on it. And that's how we koshered it. But we knew that we koshered it so well that people didn't even realize.
Everything inside.
People didn't realize. So next. So now the question is, since pots do absorb some amount of flavor, it would still be forbidden to deliberately use a dairy pot to cook meat or vice versa because of the principle of So that means like this. If it's going to absorb any amount, it's lasur. It's 1 in 175,000 or I don't know what. Yeah, but you're not allowed to be mvatela nisur lechatchila. I mean like this. Imagine right now I've got my chamin, my adafina. Can I take a drop of milk and just drop it in?
No.
Why not?
Because any sort.
And mevatzeli nisur lechatchila. Meaning even though it's going to be batel, it's going to be batel according to everybody. There's no one drop of milk inside the chamin. It's going to be batel. Nobody's going to say no. Doesn't matter if it's extra, not skim milk and one drop. Not going to do nothing. But at the end, you're not allowed to do batel isur. Okay, so you're not allowed to do that. Okay, page 4 on the top. Not purposely creating a situation of bitul. Therefore, even today, we still require 2 sets of dishes for meat and dairy. And if you accidentally use a dairy pot for meat or wish to change a pot from dairy to meat, you still need to kosher it. Why? Because however, it would seem that since the absorbed flavor is so minimal, if you accidentally cook milk in a meaty ben yomo pot, the milk would always be permitted, as long as a very small amount of meat flavor was previously absorbed. And there will always be shishim against it. Does this mean that the halachot of food cooked become obsolete? Meaning, nowadays, you're right. I can't do it lechatchila because at the end of the day, I still have a minimal tzat that it came inside. Fine. But maybe with the avad, it's good. So now you're going to call me up. You're going to say, Rabbi, I made a mistake. I cooked my milk in the meaty pot or the meat in the milky pot. So the first question is going to ask you, ben yomo, ben yomo. Now you're going to tell me, eno ben yomo. So what am I going to tell you? Bon appetit. It's eno ben yomo. It's not within 24 hours. Okay. I'm going to tell you, no, Rabbi, ben yomo. So now once upon a time, I would tell you, listen, how thick are the walls? Do you have shishim? It's very difficult to have shishim. Or take a test, how do you say, a taste tester, right? Check a taste tester, right? That's even better than the shishim, but then you don't need the shishim. Take a taste tester, according to Sfaradim. Remember, according to Sfaradim, taste tester, right? The goy will taste, right? And he's going to taste, does it have meat or milk or not? Boom. Okay, fine. Let's say right now, does it change? Why? Because if you're going to tell me now that it only absorbs such a small an amount, so technically, you should always be batel b'shishim. You should always have batel b'shishim. So lemaaseh, the accepted custom in Am Yisrael is not to deviate from the halachot of the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, and to operate under the assumption that our kelim absorb flavor. There are several reasons for this. Number one, Megillat Sefer, Kol Chazon Ish, that the measurements given by Chazal do not necessarily correspond to the scientific reality, but serve as halachic tools to determine whether something is forbidden or not. Therefore, even if pots do not absorb a significant flavor, we must still follow the directives of Chazal. Meaning that it wasn't sometimes there's, somebody once happened, they were walking down the stairs. Yeah, walking down the stairs. And he spilled his tea, right, on somebody, right? He spilled the tea. So the guy comes in, ha! He says, it's Kli Shlishi, it's on Mashel. He says, it's a Kli Shlishi. What's your problem? What was your problem? You burnt me. Why do I care now, Kli Shlishi or Kli Shani or Kli that? What do I care? You just burnt me. There's something which is a difference between, right? There's a difference between halachically cooking or halachically and what it is the scientific halachot and halachic halachot are two different halachot. So because of that, we're not going to use, right, the same criteria. Okay. Next, second, since Jews have observed the laws of basar v'chalav throughout history, even if pots do not absorb flavor, the practice has attained the status of a neder, which is biblically binding. This is also based upon the ruling of the Khatam Sofer that although today there's no practical concern for chalav akum, non-Jews only milk cows, right? Or one may still not drink milk from non-Jews unless he witnessed the milking, because abstaining from such milk becomes an accepted minhag amongst Am Yisrael. Meaning, right now, right, even though there is pig's milk nowadays, and there is donkey's milk even nowadays, and camel's milk nowadays, right? But let's just pretend that there was no such thing. Let's pretend that it became something widely accepted that there's only cow's milk. So now you're going to tell me, listen, Rabbi, this is even better than Rav Moshe Feinstein. Rav Moshe Feinstein said, listen, they're afraid of the government. They're going to get the penalties. Okay, but what happens if you're in certain places that they're not afraid of the government, right? They are the government, or the government is in with it. Or, there's many places like that. They come, they pass you a few $1,000 and gamarnu, and that's it. You don't have any problem. So what's going to happen in such a case? Fine. But let's even pretend, right, we're in a place that, but here, nobody does it. Meaning, you're going to go around and that's it. He says, no. It became a neder amongst Klal Yisrael that you have to witness the actual milking. And therefore, even if you're going to tell me that they don't do it at all, it became a neder that everyone does, that we have to follow that neder.
Are you observing?
No, they're not observing. Right? So therefore, it becomes a neder.
They're relying on Rabbi Moshe Feinstein.
Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. What?
That's for the quantity that it's absorbed in
new pots, yes. It's very small. But we keep the neder. The neder was we kept the basar v'chalav until now, and even if it's always going to absorb, and I don't know how much, we keep the same rules as always. Wow. So whatever we learned, we learned. That means it's not that we don't throw everything out. No, whatever we learned.
Did Rav Moshe Feinstein write on this also?
No, Rav Moshe Feinstein didn't speak about this case. Rav Moshe Feinstein was just basically speaking about chalav akum, that he just basically just said, listen, nowadays, the truth is, you have to remember, Rav Moshe Feinstein was forced to do such a thing because he had a problem. First of all, there was no milk. There was no choice. There was no chalav Yisrael, right? He was talking in this, they said it, his son-in-law and everything, they said it right afterwards. If Rav Moshe was today, he would never have dreamt of making, of inventing, right, of coming and saying such a heter because it just doesn't make sense. You understand? It doesn't make sense. Like, Kilu, why would I have to invent a heter, which during the time of the majority of people paskin against it, right? Whether it's Ashkenazim, whether it's Faradim, whether everywhere. You know why? Many reasons. First of all, in America, you were allowed less than 2%, that you don't have to write anything down. Now, if it's going to be less than 2%, it's not batel b'shishim because you need 120. 2%. If it was 1%, so then batel b'shishim. If it's 2%, you need 120. The shishim is 120, so it's not batel. So what did they answer on that? No, but if it came with another pig's milk, it would have to write it. Meaning only cow's milk is called milk. There's just so many back and forth, and not only that, during the time of Moshe already, there were companies that they were doing it. They got caught. They were milking. What they were doing was that they were watering down the milk. You know how nowadays they water down gas, right? So they were watering down the milk. Now the thing is, there's the FDA. They come and they check. So what did they do? They got pig's milk that has so much fat, and they added a little bit of pig's milk to it. And then what happens is when they come and they take the levels, it's the exact same level as a normal milk. Now they didn't realize that they would just watered it down so much, and then they added the pig's milk in order to make up for the lack of the thing. So therefore they did that and they got caught. And you know what they said? It was worth for them the fine than to actually come and to do it. Meaning, and by the way, you should know
the loss that would have had
would have been more.
without keeping that.
And by the way, you should know you have it today. You have it until today. What did I have it until today? Here in Harding, right? You want to do something, right? Again, sorry. Let me just 48. So the Sefer Emunati Techa, the bottom of page 4, he adds several other reasons to maintain the original halacha. Meaning, one more time, according to what we're learning today, we shouldn't need this halachot today. Why? Because if the majority of pots are absorbing bekoshi something, so then that's it. So why do you need anything? So the Sefer Emunati Techa comes and he adds a few of them. Number one, right? He comes and he says like this. He says, manufacturing methods change from generation to generation. And if we're lenient today, maybe future pots maybe produce in a way that absorb more. And then it was caused the Jews to chas Shalom consume basar v'chalav, which that does exist, meaning that many times people they change things, whether it's inductive cooking and all these, and many times if you don't realize, you say yeah it's mutar. Well, what's mutar? But you have to understand why, because sometimes it could change the halachot and all of a sudden you get stuck, right? Some kelim also absorb more than others. One second. Some kelim also absorb more than others, and the leniency with one type of a keli may lead to some with lenient with another type, meaning it could depend what type of metal. Maybe this type of metal is a certain amount. The other type maybe is a little. Nowadays, by the way, they started using again pottery. They started using kli cheres. I just bought it. I forgot what it's called, right? And it's like a special type of pots and everything. What? I forgot Corningware. I forgot what it is.
No, is it? Corningware. Because it's glass, but mixed with the color.
No. It's not. It's earthenware. It's earthenware. I remember it's. I'm gonna check again. I forgot what it's called. All right. So he comes and he says like this. The accepted custom, right, is to forbid using the same pot for meat and milk. Suddenly allowing cooking meat and milk in the same pot could lead to other transgressions, right? So that's going to be number 3. Why? Because maybe it wasn't fully clean. Number 4, right? That's also another very big problem, because nowadays I'm going to tell you, you know what? Cook in the same pot. How many times does it happen that all of a sudden it was a little bit dirty? Now you have mamashut there of basar, you have basar there, and you have a problem, right? We do not fully know the underlying reasons of the enactments of Chazal, and therefore in many considerations you have the different problems, and we do not allow using the same ones for meat and dairy besides the fusion of flavor. So again, this is always like the Gaon and everything, that basically many times, right, we have different problems that we don't know the real reason. For example, Yom Tov Sheni. People say, Rabbi, we have a calendar, we're outside of Israel, we know exactly when is the first day of Yom Tov, but we don't have the reasons. What does that mean? Sometimes there's hidden reasons of Pia Kabbalah that we need, right, 2 days, and then that's it. So now you're right. You could come, you could start saying, no, but this and that, and no. Don't become smart, right? Do the halakha and that's it. Let's try to finish. L'maaseh, as mentioned, page 5 on the top. L'maaseh, as mentioned, Am Yisrael already follows the Mesorah and the halakha. As quoted in the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, we calculate the forbidden food based upon the assumption of the kelim that absorb the flavor. Nevertheless, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach quoted in the Lichot Shlomo holds that b'shat dachak one should consult a rabbi. The Sefer Megillat Sefer explains that Rav Shlomo Zalman would take into account the fact that kelim today have minimal biliot as a tziruf, together with other reasons for the leniency. He also writes that he heard from Shmuel Auerbach, the son of Shmuel Mozamin, that he too used this as a tziruf, meaning that they would use this as a tziruf. I actually heard this from Rav Yaakov Peretz. Rav Yaakov Peretz, right? He was a very big rabbi. He was a rabbi of the Midrashah of the Kotel that they used to give Semicha to Rabbanim. He's the brother of Rav Michael Peretz. He wrote many sefarim, right? I actually have a Safarim. I went to his house. It was in Mea Sharim or a thing. And
Caracas.
yes, and his son actually was one of the first ones that gave us Semicha in Gibraltar, the son of Rav Pinchas Peretz. He was the one that wrote all the Sfarim of Rav Ovadia. The beginning when Rav Ovadia used to write Marishon LeZion, he used to write, and Rav Ovadia used to give shiurim over the Lavyan, over the satellite. And he used to come and sit down and write them all out. And those books, which are called Mishurei Shirishon LeZion, is from Rav Pinchas Peretz. So he was the son of Rav Yaakov Peretz. So he basically, I remember him that he basically said that the metal knives of nowadays are like that they don't absorb. So since they don't absorb, it was like mamash like so again, obviously they're using this as a tziruf, not lechatchila, but there is something there. Okay, this possibility is also one of the considerations. Yes, okay, but fine, the handle. That's fine.
If I started making pans out of glass, then I'm okay.
Yeah.
They are.
They are Pyrex.
Then I wouldn't have an. I wouldn't.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's the whole issue that it's metal.
Yes, metal.
So as long as it's not metal.
Yeah, but what else? I'm saying plastic. I'm saying
no. Let's say I start making it out of a plastic that's not.
So the problem though is plastic is bolea. That's the problem.
What if I coat it with glass?
Coating is not good enough. But we do use it as a sniff sometimes, but it's not good enough. Because the coating is not really the main essence of the keli, and it could be that it does. In the dishwasher, usually it doesn't get to agala. Yeah, this possibility is also one of the considerations given by many poskim to be lenient not to require two sets of dentures, one for meat and one for milk. Right? One reason is that food generally does not get it hot enough in your mouth, and another possibility is that the dentures do not absorb flavor. So therefore, that's why they're more lenient nowadays with the dentures, right? About that. Which exactly that means you don't need two different types of dentures, right? One more.
Well,
actually no, we need two more.
Rabbi, when they come to me with these questions, is completely nonsense.
100%. Oh, you have to tell them you need two sets.
No, three, part.
Part of it.
If you mix them with the meat and milk,
exactly, or you put it in the. You're gonna laugh. I had a cousin that he once forgot them in the dishwasher. And he was looking all over. He was going crazy, and then afterwards was in the dishwasher. So fine, he koshered them. Yeah, fine. Status of lids. 100%. That was a question that they once asked, and he went and he said, "Don't ask crazy questions." The Raman Sif Aleph quotes. We're almost done. C. Status of lids. What about the lids of the pot? Right. The Raman Sif Aleph quotes a dispute, a machloket, regarding the lids of pots. The first opinion states that the pots and lids have the same halachic status. Therefore, just as the pot absorbs flavor, so too does the lid, right, from the steam. Okay, and just as absorbed flavor in the pot, just as absorbed flavor in the pot becomes pagum after 24 hours, so too the absorbed flavor in the lid also becomes pagum after 24 hours. The second opinion holds that lids absorb the flavor, but the flavor never becomes pagum. Why? Which means that it always stays ben yomo. The Rama adds that this latter opinion is the accepted custom, right? And what he himself follows. But it's a chumrah, which does not make sense, really. Therefore, if there's another factor to be lenient, you can be lenient. Whether it's going to be Erev Shabbat, Erev Sed, or whatever it is, you can be lenient. Okay? There's going to be a few ways to understand this, right? But we will only focus on one. The Taz and the Shach based on the Marashal come and they say that the Rama is referring to a lid that is very narrow and pointy on the top. And we're concerned that the residue of food left on those crevices, the dina that absorbed, right? He says it's going to become pagum. Here it's never going to become pagum. The Taz paskins, if you accidentally place the Eno B'Yomo lid on the opposite pot, shishim is required against those small areas, right, that may not have been cleaned. In contrast, the Shach paskins, that shishim in the pot is necessary against the entire lid because of Hanan. Some of our modern day pots have screws that secure the handle to the lid, and it's common in the areas around it that they still have food residue. And therefore, if you accidentally use the food for the opposite, according to the Taz, you need shishim against it. And according to the Shach, you need shishim against the entire lid. So basically, one more time, you use the wrong lid. I took a lid from a milky pot to the meat, or meat to the... There's a machloket. Do you say that there exists ben yomo or not? Since there's a machloket, he would say, one says that you need shishim keneged the entire lid, and the other one just says, no, you need shishim keneged the small little areas that usually there's still food. כן, יש דבר כזה, אבל אתה שם את זה בתוך המכונה כביסה, ואין בעיה. למעשה.
לא עובר תוך כדי.
תוך כדי יכול להיות בעיה. למעשה, the Aruch HaShulchan paskins that the majority of our lids are flat without crevices, and therefore they have a status of eno b'yomo after 24 hours. Therefore, if you place eno b'yomo lid, it's going to be the same thing. You have to kasher it, but the food is permitted. Okay, so that's basically the Aruch HaShulchan nowadays as well. Okay, that means basically nowadays, don't worry about it. It's the same halakha like the pot. the exact same halacha as a pot. Okay? Last one. D. Right? What did you want to ask? Yes, about the lid.
No, but it was you.
B. Placing a lid on the opposite pot. In industrial kitchens, it often happens that dairy and meaty pots are identical in appearance. And in order to differentiate between them, you have a blue or red line. Right? In such kitchens, it's common to accidentally cover the wrong one. Even in home kitchens, sometimes you have the same problem. So what's the halakhic status of the food, the pot, and the lid? The Ramah discusses 4 different scenarios. One more time, 4 different cases that may arise when accidentally you're going to switch between the meat and milky pots. The case below referred to the situation where both the lid and the pot are b'nei yoman. Okay, and therefore everything's b'nei yoma. So remember, everything's within the 24 hours. Number 1, a hot, meaty lid on top of a hot, meaty pot. Okay, remember, hot, meaty lid, meaty pot, milky pot, dairy pot. The pot, I told you to look inside. If you don't look inside, don't even bother. The pot, the lid, and the food inside are all prohibited. So now in this case, everything is asur. Why is everything asur? Everything is hot and everything's ben yomo. So everything's going to be asur. The Yad Yehuda explains that the steam from the food rises and prohibits the lid, where absorbed the flavor then transfers back via the steam into the food and therefore into the pot. The Chumudei Daniel infers from the language of the Ramah that the lid, pot, and food become instantaneously forbidden because only in the next case does the Ramah write that the food becomes prohibited only after the steam becomes to rise. So therefore, in this case, the second you put it on, hasta la vista. That's it. Case number 2, placing a cold milky lid on a hot dairy pot. So remember, the pots are still 2. Obviously, if there's 4 cases, 2 of the cases, it's going to be a hot dairy pot. Okay, so now the first 2, hot meaty lid, and then a cold meaty lid. So if the food begins to steam, then everything is prohibited. Why? Tata gavat. But if you place the lid on an opposite pot and quickly remove it before it gets to yatzoledebo, everything is permitted because nothing really happened. One more time, the top part, nothing really happened because it was not yatzoledebo. Nothing. You just put it on. After 2 minutes, hey, what was it? Oh, take it off. So no problem. Next, placing a hot meaty lid on a cold dairy pot. So now we switched it. The bottom pot now is cold. The top is hot, and it's a hot meaty lid. What? Yeah, the Ramah paskins that the lid and the pot are permitted because of tatagavar. The bottom is the main thing. But one must remove kidei klipa of the food, if possible, because some drops may have fallen onto it. The Badei HaShulchan explains that neither the lid or the pot require kashering because they are comparable to 2 pots touching one another, where the flavor is not transferred. So Yadzal, although the lid is wet with hot drops, it still has the status of the meaty food, since there's going to be only a few drops, and they have the status of a klishani, right, which does not have the power to enter the pot. If the drops falling from the lids are meaty, so why do you need only klipa? You should need also shishim. The Yad Avram explains that not every contact between the opposite foods is treated the same. There's a fundamental distinction between a case where forbidden flavor is absorbed into permitted food fuses with it, and a case where 2 opposite foods just come into contact. Right? That means you don't actually cook together. You just come into contact. When a non-kosher flavor is absorbed and fuses, you need shishim. But when it doesn't fuse and it's just on top of it, it just mixes. So therefore, you just have to separate them, and then that's it. So therefore, the drop of condensed steam falls from the lid into the food, right? In essence, there's nothing there. So therefore, you only need kedei klipa. You just peel off the top part, and that's it. The rest of the food is going to be permitted. So now we're going to mention, according to the Ramah, when the hot lid is placed on a cold pot, the lid and the pot are both permitted because minimal drops is no problem. The Shach disagrees. He says the droplets are still attached to a Kli Rishon, and therefore he comes and he says only the droplets which spritz out become connected to the Kli Rishon. Fine. We're going to speak about now common practical applications, right? And he says like this. So he says like this. Number 1, if you have a hot cholent lid and drops fall onto the dairy counter, the counter just needs to be wiped clean. There's no problem. Right? Why? The drops cooled off. One more time. I took off the lid. I've got drops. They go on the counter. Right? Milky counter. Dry it off. That's it. Nada. Fine. Next. A hot lid onto a cold dairy counter. What does that compare to? So he comes and he says the drops are considered like a klishani. But according to the Shach, right, the counter has to be kosher. But he, according to the first one, says there's no problem. Right? He says if you lift the cholent lid and drops fall into a dairy food, if the food is liquid, you need shishim. If the food is a solid, kedei klipa. Right? You have now the number 4. Kli klipa is like an onion peel, the thickness of an onion peel.
So you
Placing, yes, you have to peel off a thickness like this, and that's it. Placing a hot meaty lid on an empty pot on a hot, right, empty dairy pot. One more time.
What?
Placing a hot meaty lid. A hot meaty lid from an empty pot on a hot empty dairy pot. So he says the Beretiv explains according to the Rama, everything is permitted because it's like two pots touching each other, meat and milk, that there's nothing there. Summary chart. We're giving you the summary. Here you go. Yeah, Jordan. Summary. Page 8. Right? Summary.
Why too hot? What they doing?
Because hot and hot, nothing happens. Because they
But why is the people making like one?
made a mistake. They put on the wrong one. It's a mistake. Yeah. So he says a hot lid, hot pot, everything is forbidden. Cold pot, according to the Ramah, the pot and lid are permitted, but the food you have to do kli klipa. According to the Shach, if it's a lid that was wet, everything has to be kashered. Cold lid on a hot pot, if the lid remains on long enough, so then everything's prohibited. If it's not, everything's permitted. Cold on cold, everything is permitted. That's your summary, right, for today.